What's up, everyone? Welcome to another North Leeds Jitz podcast. As always, we're joined by Professor Mike.
What's up?
And today we're joined by Liam, who runs Scramble Academy here in Leeds. He's the owner and head instructor, right?
So I co-own with Fred and Mike, but yeah, absolutely. Scramble Academy Leeds. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
No, it's really our pleasure. So I would love to kind of hear about your jiu-jitsu journey and hear about all the great things you're doing at Scramble. And you're an active competitor still, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Next competition is going to be the 2nd of October. So
I'd love
this
to.
is why I'm in shape-ish. Cool. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Yeah. So, did you kind of boring question first? Like, how did you start out in jiu-jitsu and where, why, and all that kind of stuff?
In relation to where I'm at now, it was actually bizarrely romantic, really. So I now run the gym with Fred and Mike, and at the time I'd met Fred in Lancaster. I was squatting. I remember this very distinctly. I was squatting, and if you look over and you see somebody who's in a weird angle when they're squatting, you're like, well, Fred actually saw me like this, came in, and actually was just like, listen, we need to sort that form out straight away, and probably saved me some severe injury, really. So that's how I initially met Fred, and during that summer, I really learned a lot from Fred to the point where I actually just decided I'm going to stay in Lancaster over the university break and just learn from him.
You were at uni at the time?
Yes. Yeah. So this is 2009, 2008.
Sweet.
So I can't remember exactly when, but around that sort of time.
University at Lancaster, or
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
cool.
absolutely. So it was in the weight room.
What were you studying?
So I was studying environmental science at the time, and I that's how I came to Leeds as well. But I was maybe slightly more naive back then and thought you're going to try and change the world, environmental warming, all the rest of it, and we can do that sort of thing in our own way, But at the time, I thought okay, that's really what I want to try and drive my life towards. And as I was in the weights room and I met Fred, and he probably saved me some sort of injury. And then bizarrely, after several weeks, months of training and talking, we talked a lot of philosophy, and I really looked up to him at the time as well. He just sort of said, do you want to drag some mats out and have a bit of a roll around? Which is a bit of a weird ask, Okay, I see where this has come from and where this is going. But no, jokes aside, we took some mats into a squash court, and he just battered me. Do you know what I mean? And I remember at the time, I was an older brother. I was always physically fit-ish. Do you know what I mean? And I remember thinking he didn't beat me because he's stronger than I am. He didn't beat me because he's bigger than I am. He just beat me. Yeah. And it was one of those things where he was in close. I remember this very, very distinctly. He was in close guard. He put his legs so he crossed his feet around here with both of my arms in. So he had me in this weird TP double arm bar. And I remember trying to stand up to get out of it and toppling forwards. And as the floor came up to my face and my arms were caught, I thought, I've got to learn this. I really, really got to learn what just happened.
We've all had that experience, haven't we? Everyone who starts just had that moment where usually for a guy, another man's dominated you, right? And it is that kind of moment where your ego can't handle it, and you're like, no, I don't need to know this. Or it's if you're a student, I need to understand what the hell just happened.
Yeah, it's like a personality filter almost. Right. Do you know what I mean? I think this is why you get a lot of camaraderie within jiu-jitsu, because a lot of people who can't handle that. I mean, everybody starts at white belt. I don't know about you guys. I've never met somebody who's naturally a black belt, which doesn't exist. No. And so, yeah, I think it's one of those where you fight or flight, isn't it, really? I don't want to be here, or I've got to learn more about this and go into it.
Fantastic.
What was your understanding of jiu-jitsu at that point? Had you heard of it? Had Fred told you about it? Was Fred a white belt, or was he...
My genuine understanding of jiu-jitsu in that exact moment was I can't get my arms out and the floor's coming at my face really fast. I can't move. I literally knew nothing.
Okay, right.
I knew absolutely nothing. I didn't even know it existed. I didn't know it was called jiu-jitsu.
Right.
Fred himself had not trained for very long. I mean, Fred's a smart guy, so he's one of those that can take to it very quickly. But I knew absolutely nothing. All I knew was that this guy that I respected a lot had a hobby that he wanted to play, and I was like, yeah, I'm game for that. Like, you've not steered me wrong so far. Why the hell not?
Where was he training at the time?
I don't think he was. I don't think he was. I think he'd done. I don't even know where he. I think he'd done
picking
a
on
little
random
bit.
people in the gym and just
I'm not paying. Sorry, Fred. I'm not paying the best picture. But I think he'd literally done a little bit previous. I wish I knew that actually, but no, I think he'd just done a little bit before. He wouldn't have been a one stripe. Do you know what I mean? It was really like a couple of weeks sort of thing, that sort of thing.
Oh wow.
And then from then onwards, 2 weeks later, our other training partner, Mike, who is from Scramble as well, Mike joined in, and Mike is, I joke that Mike's like an AI sent from the future to do jiu-jitsu. Do you know what I mean? Like he picked it up like this, and he will have great pleasure in telling you that like for the following 8 years, I'd never tapped him. You know what I mean? And I'm not bad,
Right.
And we just had a little bit of a play, and then an Aikido black belt turned up and swiftly got handled by us white belt no stripes, if you know what I mean. And he fell in love. And then actually by the time my time at Lancaster sort of finished, there was about probably 15, 20 of us who were just having a roll around here and there.
So you started this kind of group?
I didn't. It was Fred's like thing, and it was just like the passion that we had together. Just sort of people walked past the door and was like, "What's going on in here?" It just grew over a year, 2 years or so before I came to Leeds. I think Leeds was late 2009. Yeah. Yeah.
And then you got to Leeds, and did we immediately like looking for jiu-jitsu, or you kind of
100%? Yeah. So Fred, like this is the thing. So Fred then moved to China.
Oh wow.
Mike stayed in Leeds.
Of course he did. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Fred went over there, set up an academy, and this is one of the other things I cannot say enough like things about Fred. He's a wonderful human being. Like so, for example, set up an academy out there, spent 3 years building it. Produced a load of gis out there as well, and then when it came for his time to come back he just handed the keys off to the guy who he was doing it with, and that's that. He just gave it all away. Didn't try and keep any sort of connection in that sense. He's just like, no, this has been great. Thanks very much. It's yours now. Yeah. So this time I'd come to Leeds, and the first time I trained was at Game Fight. And that was an experience. And
is that True Spirit? Then? Is that
it was? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and
in the garage around the back.
Yeah, with James and with Mabsy and all the rest of them. And this is probably showing a little bit of my character behind the scenes, but I felt like that was maybe a little too rough for me to start out with.
Me too.
You know what I mean? I loved the technical aspect of it, but I wasn't conditioned like they were.
It was an MMA thing, that
absolutely.
jiu-jitsu on the side, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was really interested in the jiu-jitsu side, but I certainly didn't have the physicality to keep up at that moment, which is, that's me at the time. And so then I went to the university club, and the university club was run by Darren Good. And this was again like a personality filter, because I was, still a white belt, and Darren, I remember Darren, very good brown belt at the time. He'd run kickers, legend within the sort of like the Leeds scene. And he beat me up, but he put me in knee on belly. And I remember he put me in knee on belly, and now looking back, I know exactly what he was doing. He was like, I'm going to tire out the peppy white belt. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I remember like being in a crumpled heap for 6 minutes. And then at the end of the 6 minutes, I was like, do you want to go again? Like this, and I remember him saying no, and I thought that's a moral victory for me. I've won this here, do you know what I mean? And that was the second time I ever thought, right, okay, I can actually do something here. So it's not the fact that I wasn't conditioned for game fight in the same sense. I just didn't have I was too far out of my comfort zone, and this was right at the very edge, which is where growth happens, I feel. Yeah. And I had something similar happen back in Lancaster, where Fred and I used to do these like 40-minute long rolls, which was a bit dumb now that I think about it, but fair enough. And his t-shirt fell across my face, and I remember drowning in his t-shirt, and I inhaled t-shirt, and I remember having a panic attack and thinking like, I can either tap to a t-shirt or I can persevere. And I persevered. Yeah, I literally waterboarded myself. And I remember thinking in that exact moment, like, you're not the guy to tap to a t-shirt, are you, Liam? Are you really? And that again sort of gave me the love for jiu-jitsu, because once again, I'm right on the edge of my comfort zone. It took me to somewhere that I never thought I could get to. It made me make a decision that was life or death in my mind at that time, or as close as it can get, not real life or death, but and again, it was one of those moments where I found out something about myself that I didn't know I knew,
And you realised that you were stronger than you thought you perhaps were mentally, or were you always, like as a kid, even before then, were you competitive, you do sports? Like,
I've always been super competitive. Like my mum took the Monopoly set away after the first Christmas. After we were writing our own notes out and things, me and my little brother and everybody else had gone to bed and all the rest of it. But no, it was more of a case of like I've never experienced this before, and it really felt like it was a crossroads, and I just turned left on the crossroads rather than right. And I think if I'd have turned right on that crossroads, I might not be sat here with you guys today.
Wow, that's a great message, really, isn't it? Because I think everyone experiences that. We obviously, in your academy as well, which we'll talk about later. New students hit that crossroads. Everyone does. And you have to make a choice. You're either sticking on the jiu-jitsu journey and you're going to face those demons head on, or you're going to turn and exit out the back door and no one's going to see you again. And we've obviously had lots of those members and lots who are sticking with it. So, worth it?
100%. 100%. And ultimately, if I had gone right, I like to think that I would have been the type of person to seek out the situation later on and revisit it and try again. Which I think, if I was going to give advice to anybody in jiu-jitsu terminologies, like let's say they come here, tried it out, let's say they come to Scramble, tried it out, and maybe it's not the right time. There's more to it than choking each other out. You guys have an incredible community here. I've just seen a bunch of you guys train, they look after the mats, they clean up after themselves. It's wonderful, do you know what I mean? So I think like there's more to it that will keep people, but ultimately you can take it as deep or shallow as you like. Not everybody has to compete, not everybody has to really test themselves there. But if you are sparring, there'll come that day where the guy a couple of kilos heavier than you is on your chest and you've got to make that decision like we talk about here. So I don't want to make it out for anybody listening like jiu-jitsu is purely like a life or death decision-making process, but it's up to you if you want to take it to that, and that's a blessing, I think.
Well, it's a test of your character, isn't it? And I think that's where it crosses over into life itself, in business or in relationships. Are you the person who's going to try and deal with this situation, the problem, or are you going to make excuses, give up and turn away? Yeah. So I think that's where jiu-jitsu can cross over, and that's a really strong kind of thing. So we're in True Spirit. We've been in True Spirit. You then go to the University Club. Darren Good's there. We interviewed Craig Tetley last week, and Craig obviously started at that time as well.
Craig's the hardest man in Leeds. Yeah. He's like this incredible jiu-jitsu coach, but like an incredible stand-up guy and an incredible boxer as well. Like he had a full career, being an incredible boxer before.
Incredibly humble as well.
He's so nice.
But a lot of those killers are, man.
So we met again at Gracie Bar.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where I went to next. So what happened did that happen?
So that was the uni club was once a week, and it was no-gi, and then how do I get more of this? And I went to Gracie Bar Leeds. That's where I think we first met, and there was a lot of much better guys at Gracie Bar Leeds as an aggregate. Do you know what I mean? So obviously Darren Good as a brown belt was the highest rank in Leeds. I think Tom was a brown belt around that time, or maybe purple 4 or something. So not necessarily like a higher level, but as an aggregate, do you know what I mean? Like the guys were there to do their hobby, not to just turn up to a uni club. Do you know what I mean? And so this gave me this like whole other idea of what's next. There's levels to this sort of thing, and I was definitely at the bottom rung of the ladder. And again, like that's awesome. Like I love that. So
sorry, at this point, were you still kind of focused on your degree and stuff, or were you thinking more, jiu-jitsu might be something I want to do for a career type thing?
Jiu-jitsu as a career path is tough, man. Like I never, ever in my wildest dreams from white to purple really thought that, I really thought like, no one's going to pay me for this. Do you know what I mean? Like that's not as a sort of, well now it's a little bit different, but back then like, and I'd say still to a degree, like martial arts isn't where you're going to make your millions. Do you know what I mean? Like it has to be extremely well managed for you to earn a living to support a family and the people that come beneath that. And like, what you've done here is awesome. You have to be that type of savvy to be able to really support the people within your life in the way that you want to support them. So at the time, I never thought that jiu-jitsu was going to be a career. I just was obsessed,
right?
And I was really obsessed with like, as bad as it sounds, like I'm a white belt 1, this guy's a white belt 2. Let's go. Do you know what I mean?
I might have been that white belt too. I remember Liam from the other side. I remember you, and there was a kid called Josh, I think he was called.
Josh Kennedy?
No, not Josh Kennedy, but him as well.
Yeah.
There was another kid as well. Was it Josh or I can't remember.
There was Mark, Smiler, Christian, a lot of
Christian.
Yeah.
So all these younger guys came in, because I'm like 10 years older than you, I think. So like there was all these younger guys came in. I had not long started either, and they started like kicking everyone's ass. I mean, it was a really kind of tough time. Tough for us, tough for me, because again, you've got people who, for the ego, like people coming in and then just schooling you. So it was quite a nice time then, right?
It was a beautiful time.
It was a nice club.
Yeah.
Tom was the kind of man, because Darren then stepped away.
I don't think Darren. I think Darren sort of like intermittently trained there, but I don't think he was really like there. Do you know what I mean?
Tom's thing, really.
It was Tom's thing, and there was Ian. I forget his second name. He had a shaven head, chiseled, good-looking dude.
Right. Yeah.
You remember?
Yeah.
Funny that you remember when I say he's good-looking.
Yeah. So you just said the chiseled bit. I was like, yeah, I don't remember.
And I remember he was a purple belt, and I remember like each week, each week I got progressively less battered by him, and that was awesome. You know what I mean? And Mark Lee was down there. Mark was blue going on to purple.
Did you still see Mark?
Yeah. I
right?
saw him last week. I'm going to be going and judging with him this weekend. Yeah, he's one of my best friends. In fact,
because Mark was one of the. He might have been one of the first to blue belt. Like he was really on it.
Yeah, because he knew Tom from 16. But I remember Mark. Do you know the roulette sweep? So he's basically he's in closed guard, and the thing about the roulette sweep is you face plant if you don't roll. Yeah. So he's in closed guard. He's got hold of my sleeves. Like I stand up, he drops, which makes me fall forward. But he's got hold of my hands. So as I fall forward, I put my hands down, and he pulls them out the way, and so you fall this way.
That was his thing.
That was his thing, right? Absolutely his thing. And like I remember in that roll, he swept me with the roulette sweep. And I was like, I'm not having that. I fought super hard to get back up to my feet, and he did it again. And he swept me a second time. And that was a big moment for me as well, because I was like, no one's ever going to catch me with the same thing twice. Getting caught once is me. Getting caught twice is my ego. Do you know what I mean? And it wasn't like getting caught twice is you. Getting caught twice is me. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? The first one's my mistake. The second one is my head. You know. And that was a massive moment that actually like really improved me along. But yeah, so Gracie Barra, I stayed there primarily Gracie Barra Leeds, and met Victor, met Braulio through Tom. And that's one thing that you can say for Tom is like an incredible networker. We met people that like 90% of the country would never have met because of how prolific he was. Victor stayed on his couch and all of that, and that was awesome because Victor and Braulio were the best in the world. Yeah. At the time, Braulio was winning ACC, ETC, that sort of stuff. So, so through Gracie Barra, so I stayed for a really, really long time.
We were all training at the same time, right?
Yeah,
so it was like
really
white belts, blue belts, purple belts, maybe even.
Yeah.
When did you step away then?
Tom gave me my brown, I remember.
Oh, there we go. That's right way up to them. We were all trained together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Dav and mine, who now runs Senshi. It just grew and grew and grew. And I mean, the thing that I always remember about those early days was I couldn't get there. I was just a student, no money, that sort of thing. And you remember Smiler?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Smiler lives in Roundhay, so around here. And Smiler would drive 20 minutes out of his way to pick me up and 20 minutes out of his way to drop me off. And he did this 3 times a week so that I could train jiu-jitsu. And I think it was just for the conversation as much as anything. But that has stuck with me as in like, I can't pay it back to Smiler. Like I don't have anywhere to drop him off, but I can pay it forward. 100%. You know what I mean? So a big part of my ethos, whether it's giving people lifts or giving people time or anything else, is a big recognition. Again, I probably wouldn't be sat here if it wasn't for him. Like, truth, I can't get there any other way. I can't afford it. Like I'm not going to walk an hour to get smashed to pieces to then walk an hour home. Yeah. I just physically couldn't do it.
There wasn't a lot of jiu-jitsu back then in Leeds, right? Because Lewis, Professor Lewis, who runs Harrogate, he used to drive from Malta. It was like an hour and 45 minutes to training, like 3-4 times a week, like craziness. People are walking to our academy from around the corner, and then they've got Scramble, and they've got Senshi, and they've got game fight. It's like so much jiu-jitsu now, but back then it was like that was the place.
Yeah,
right?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely, and like fair play to Tom, he built that.
Yeah, he did.
Do you know what I mean? And the other thing that Tom did extremely well was the gym wasn't ever the same year on year. I think the first one was in Pudsey judo room.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that
the big
had like
fucking barn doors.
With those like there's 3 leaks and 2 buckets. So they just moved the bucket around for whichever leak was worse. And then after that, we obviously moved to Bramley.
It was a downstairs one first.
Downstairs,
right?
I remember
the
him
pillars in the
knocking
middle
through
of
the
the mat.
walls and all the rest of it, and we helped build that place. And I remember there's one corner that's probably still like that we didn't know how to fill in, so we just chucked a load of gravel and sand in and then put some cement on top and hope for the best. And on the mats, it was crunchy in that corner. So if you were rolling, it was just in that corner whenever you were over there. Just, again, great times, right? Little weights gym on the corner. And then he moved it upstairs and, big mat space, kind of,
That's why essentially it's still there now, right? I think.
Yeah, so they moved again, and Senshi have knocked through and like invested in facilities and built a weights room. And Dav and Martin, I mean, like Dav and Martin now are both 2 tags. They've got Michael Holsworth just promoted to black belt. They've got they've got a proper squad there. Do you know what I mean? Proper squad.
Yeah, I bumped into not to speak too early, but I bumped into Dav at the Empire recently. Well, Dav and I got black belt on the same day, and Adam as well.
Yeah, Adam Marshall.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because he was down there as well, right? And all those guys. Cool, man. And it's been nice, isn't it, to see, I suppose, the jiu-jitsu community in Leeds as inevitably, break off, but then that just kind of like force multiplies jiu-jitsu and then just
100%.
reaches more and more people. So
100%.
I feel kind of proud of being part of, in a small way, doing that, and you're doing the same.
Well, we all helped each other grow to a point where we could.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like if it wasn't, if it was just Tom on his own, and then, a bunch of white belts, it would take them forever, do you know? But like each person is like an integral part of the jigsaw puzzle, Yeah. And like it's the sum of its parts really, rather than the individual, I think,
100%. Yeah. No, very nice.
So when you got your brown belt, were you moved away from the Gracie Barra stuff, was it?
I always had a weird time with belts because like I never really cared, to be honest. And so like when I got promoted to purple from blue 3, I got promoted to brown from purple 2, and I got promoted to black from brown 0. Right. So it was always one of those where I just trained a lot. And then, I think 2 of my belts were actually just thrown at me by Tom. I put this on, you know what I mean? And I remember, so sorry, what was your question again?
You moved away from Gracie Barra at that time?
So I was coaching the no-gi, and I really fell in love with no-gi very early on. My goal, or my sort of motivation, I guess, within jiu-jitsu was to understand how best to win a scrap. So I always felt like a little bit of imposter syndrome in the new place, for example, because Fred's won the Euros. Mike is actually an AI sent from the future to do jiu-jitsu. Do you know what I mean? And I hadn't tapped him in 8-10 years. Do you know what I mean? There's a funny story about that as well, actually. But I moved. I was coaching the no-gi, and like it was, I kind of regret the way that sort of came about a little bit, because like when I was coaching the no-gi, I had people who just wanted to do no-gi and they shared my passion. But it was almost like the club within what it was at the time split up a little bit, and I have to take responsibility for that. Like I didn't go to anywhere near as many of the gi sessions as I probably should, and then it meant that when I split, like I had a little posse that followed.
University as well, you teach.
Yeah, so I was teaching as much as I could, and really like I was teaching some PTs as well, and all of that came about basically because I remember the first time that somebody gave me money for jiu-jitsu, I was just like, it was like 15 quid or something. I'm like,
sure?
You've made a mistake here. Do you know what I mean? Like I just remember at that moment just being like, no, that's not real, is it?
But I think some of that is down to the way we were brought up through jiu-jitsu. Like Tom charged us like, I don't know, 5 quid in cash a session, and if you forgot it, then he was like, you forgot it, no problem. It wasn't a business, and he'll accept that. It didn't grow to where it could have been because it wasn't a business. It was a hobby for him. And so it felt weird to us to for the money to be involved. I always remember Victor standing up saying, we need to professionalize jiu-jitsu, it's happening. And we were all like, nah, it's just a hobby, right?
Well, behind the scenes to that, actually, what happened with myself and Tom was there came a point where the gym needed a little bit of a cash injection. And again, I was a student, so I didn't have much, but it had a little bit. So I basically drained my entire bank account, gave it to Tom, and was like, make the gym work. And then and that was about 1,000 quid or something. Right. And then he was like, I'm never going to charge you membership again. And obviously I was there for 5 years, so it was a good investment. But at the time, looking back on it, I was like, if I had my business hat on, I'd have been like, do you know what I mean? But in the moment, that's actually kind of why I think I got as much out of the gym as I did, because I knew that I'd built it a little bit in my own mind. Do you know? So again, I think there's probably a couple of like Nesta, for example, who help support the gym an awful lot, you know, and like that actually was when we were in the downstairs at Bramley. And I've not actually told anybody that ever, do you know what I mean? But that was essentially like my contribution to the gym. And so
very cool.
From there, I helped build, I helped knock down walls. I kind of considered it kind of like my place, but I didn't have any equity. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is a, you know, weird way of thinking about it now. I was quite young at the time and all the rest.
Yeah, but a good investment long term because you're
Absolutely,
passionate, you're involved,
absolutely.
you're connected, and then you train more, and then you develop faster, right?
And I think there's in a way, there's like a mental commitment that comes with a financial commitment in that sense. Like I basically said, like, this is the most valuable thing in the world to me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And like, therefore, I'm going to be here forever. Do you know what I mean? And I really hope it works, because if it doesn't, it's going to hurt me a lot.
So then you're training no-gi. I kind of remember this because I was teaching the fundamentals class, as it was called then, as a brown belt for Tom. And you were doing all the no-gi, and you were training at Uni Club as well. And then there was like Tom kind of like left, and it was a bit messy. We don't really need to talk about how all that ended up, but it kind of split off. And Davin Martin kind of took the academy and Craig Grayson Barrow Leeds, and then that turned into Senshi. Fred, if I remember, was up at Heavy Metal Gym up in Ilkley. Is that right? So he was training down there.
Yeah.
And then tell us about the start of Scramble then. Like what happened there?
So Tom and I had discussed about the potential of me getting involved with Gracie Barra, and that didn't come to fruition, which is fine. And in a way, that kind of was one of the greatest gifts that Tom ever gave me, because it put the idea that I could have run a club in my head.
Yeah.
And I remember the job that I was at, like I remember the manager, I remember saying to him like, oh, my old coach has just talked about this. I could see in his face like, this guy's not going to be with us for much longer. Do you know what I mean?
No, what was it you were doing?
So I was working in IT sales for a company called Docman. I've never really been a good fit for employment. Do you know what I mean? I was way too passionate. Like I'm not even kidding, right? So like in that particular role, you know, I remember it was a sales job, and I was like, okay, I'm going to read this sales book, and like in a week, if we all read it, then we can discuss it. Do you know what I mean? And a week later, I'm like, okay, guys, and they were like, oh, we didn't read that. But I was like, but you agreed. I'm like, no, we didn't. And it's like, Liam, you're disrupting the team here, mate. Do you know what I mean? And I just remember being like, I'm really not suited for this.
Yeah.
And your manager then, when he heard you talk about jiu-jitsu, he saw like the passion in your eyes. He's like, this guy.
Well, yeah, basically, and I think we both knew that, like, you know, you I don't want to use the word lifer, but there's a lot of people who like will come to a role, they'll become extremely like comfortable with that role, and then it's like, you know, it's you get up in the morning, you do your role, and then the rest of your life happens outside of work. Do you know what I mean? And like you create these incredible friendships within your role and all the rest of this. And like it didn't fit enormously well for me, because I wanted to progress. And the thing is that like the better you get at a role, the less chance there is of like meaningful progress if you're not in the right environment, because like they want you to fulfill that role.
Yeah.
If you're amazing at cleaning the mats and you can clean the mats 20 times faster than everybody else, nobody really wants you to be the manager, because you can clean the mats faster than 20 other people. Do you know what I mean? So it's one of those where like I would never say, you know, you're like that type of thing, but I was always really motivated by progress. I think that's why jiu-jitsu, actually, I think because obviously not doing much of it over the pandemic, I really realized that what I'm really in love with is applied, meaningful progress. So I tried a couple of other projects during the pandemic and stuff like this, but without going on too much of a tangent, like that's what I wanted in the areas of my life, you know, whether it be work, whether it be jiu-jitsu, whether it be fitness, whether it be information, anything. You know,
You're a goal setter, and you set goals and then you work towards them, or do you just organically kind of develop on that progression?
Yeah, good question. So it's evolved a lot over time, and now I'd say that I like invert a lot of the way that I see the world. So if I want to win this competition on the second, then instead of thinking about like, okay, right, next I'm going to do this and next I'm going to do that, it's kind of like, what type of person wins this competition on the second? Well, the type of person that's in shape, the type of person that kept to his diet, the type of person that trained smart, the type of person that rested smart. Still need to work on that one. Yeah. You know what I mean? That type of thing. So I tend to invert it a lot. Do you know what I mean? So I guess like you could say, you know, set a goal and work towards it, but it's more along the lines of like the outcome is important, and you can get a little bit hung up on the process to that outcome. So if this is the outcome that I want, in an ideal path, I go A to B. but it's like this all the time. And every experience in life I've had, it's never been this, even if I plan meticulously. So I think it's easier to sort of think about what type of person attains this, and then develop the character traits for that. And then it doesn't really matter how you get there. Do you know what I mean? Because you're going to be the type of person, you know. And then I've learned this a lot with like health and business and these sort of things. It's like you think of somebody who's running like a successful business as like a business person, right? Do you know what I mean? Like that type of thing. And as such, it's like, well, what character traits does a good business person have? Or what character traits does a good black belt have? Or what character traits?
I was going to ask, does that apply to the way you teach jiu-jitsu as well? Do you kind of...
Absolutely. I've been on like this absolute I've had one of these realizations, like, you know, the layers of the onion that you go through. I had this layer of the onion recently, and you'll have it all the time through coaching. I'm sure you do as well, where you're like, man, if I knew this 10 years ago, these sort of like, it's like with everything, and you can't get too hung up on that. But recently, you know, I've been thinking a lot about the chaos that happens within jiu-jitsu and what it is that I want my students to achieve within that moment. And the problems that I've found is that, like, as soon as stuff goes a little bit wrong, it starts to degenerate, you know? So what is it that I can do to get this outcome without focusing too hard on the process? Because the process can be different, you know? And so very much so, yeah. I've been doing a lot of back work recently, and like the outcome's a choke, you know? So it's like, does it matter if that choke comes off an arm trap? Does it matter if it comes off a transition? Does it matter if it comes right as you get to the back and from the roll? Does it matter? It doesn't really matter, does it? Does it matter really in the rule set if it's over the jaw? Does it matter? No. It's like the process is not actually that important. The outcome is important. And so for a guard pass, for example, like the process might be a knee cut, but like, let's say I tried to knee cut Mike, I'm gonna fail. It's just the truth. Do you know what I mean? I say, Mike, I'm gonna knee cut you. I try it, I will not succeed. Mike's a black belt and a good black belt. It's gonna be tough for me to do that. But if the outcome is the guard pass, it doesn't matter if it's a knee cut, a long step, it doesn't matter if it's a Toriander pass, it doesn't matter if it's an X pass, it doesn't matter. And then the truth is that actually, like, it doesn't really matter. Do you know what I mean? And most of the guard passes that I hit now, I wouldn't be able to say this is that. Do you know what I mean? It's just
so true. But I think that understanding only comes through experience.
100%.
I talk to my students about that, about the importance of understanding the concepts around what they're trying to achieve. So the same kind of analogy of what does this person look like? Because once you understand the concepts and principles, all the techniques happen anyway. They don't need a name.
Yeah.
A sweep. I under your hips, I take away a post and I tip you over. That's a sweep.
Yeah, 100%.
Full stop.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Because then you find, because new people to jiu-jitsu, they get paralyzed by, well, I don't know what to do. And that's the chaos, because you've got nowhere to reference.
Yes.
So you say, well, don't think about what you're doing. Remember, inside space is key. So hide your inside space with inside space. And then you know you've got the advantage. So that's
1,000%.
Well, that's higher level.
Right.
I'm not saying that because I'm saying it, but that's higher level understanding of jiu-jitsu
100%.
and as a coach, it's kind of hat on, right?
So I've been then trying to sort of like parlay this into a model, and I've kind of nicked half of Danaher's model. By the way, like, he's just solved it, mate. Like, he's just like, if jiu-jitsu was a lock, Danaher's just like, do you know what I mean? He's just done it, you know, and like,
do you see him as, how do you see Danaher? Because he's a Marmite character, so you love him. Well, I love him, to a degree. Where do you see him? Is he the greatest jiu-jitsu instructor in the world?
Yes, no doubt. No
greatest
doubt.
jiu-jitsu mind,
Yeah, no doubt. But like, you would be if you spent if you started with a philosophy degree and then you just did your whole life. Like, he doesn't have, to my understanding, he doesn't have this, like, a super strong relationship, doesn't have kids, doesn't have all the rest of it. Like, where you and I might be spinning several plates, business hat, all the rest of it, his plate has been one plate, and it's been martial arts. Not necessarily even just jiu-jitsu, but martial arts. And I think like what he's done extremely well is he understands the mechanics and the sort of the baser level concepts to such an intelligent degree that he can systemize it. And I think the big thing that he has that I think a lot of other coaches don't, other than that just sort of enormous breadth of experience, is he has the intelligence to verbalize it. And
system's the key, right? He creates literal systems.
And I was actually talking to a friend of mine recently who has been like sort of diagnosed with extremely mild autism, for want of a better way of describing it. And he said that like the difference between himself, and he's like an unbelievably smart guy, he said the difference between myself and a lot of other people who suffer from this sort of mild condition is that I can verbalize what's going on in my head well enough that people can recognize it. And I think this is the same thing with Danaher. He's like a philosophy student.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's got some of the greatest minds in the world training with him. He's training with Eddie Cummings and Gary and Gordon. These incredibly dedicated, intelligent guys. And like he himself is clearly a genius, you know, in terms of the way that he thinks. And so what he has that I think a lot of other people don't is, other than the 40 plus years of experience, is like the ability to sort of run it through these different lenses, the lens of philosophy, the lens of biomechanics, the lenses of this, and then take all of this like enormous like picture and then just boil it down into this one thing that you need to hear. And he repeats himself a ton through his DVDs, but you'll know yourself that repetition is the key to learning, you know, and I think that's what makes him the greatest. And like, I think, you know, I'm going to have a bit of a controversial statement here, but I think like, if you don't think he's the greatest, watch it again. Watch it again, and then watch it again. And like, if you don't get it, watch it again and
I
again.
wonder if you
and
need to keep watching it until you understand jiu-jitsu to a certain level. What do you think? Do you think it's accessible for people brand new, or what do you think?
Well, yeah, as a lower, you know, belt level, and have been watching Danaher for, you know, a couple of years now. I've gone back and watched stuff multiple times. Each time I watch it, I'll take away something different that I didn't understand at the first. Just like when you read any book, like
right,
you know, book that's meaningful to you, you read it and then you go back later in life and you read it again. It's like, oh, these things mean different to me because I have different experiences.
Can I swear?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like the idea is the good shit sticks, right? I tell you 10 points, 2 of those land. Those were the good shit for you, right? The good shit sticks.
Nice,
and there's plenty of times, like I don't know, DVD will have, you know, 100 pieces of good shit, and like you really can only have about 3 or 4 of those stick to you at any one time.
Nice.
Cool. Where do we leave off?
Just finish on Danaher.
On Danaher.
Yeah, and I'd
Can you
love
cut straight back in, or?
Yeah.
So so we were talking about Danaher, and we were leading that towards me sort of saying that I'd taken a lot from his systems.
Yeah.
And it like, my dirty secret is I've not really watched that much, right? I follow a lot of his Instagram posts and all the rest, but the way I kind of see it is it's kind of like, it's like a video game and you've got the cheat code book sat next to you, you know what I mean? So I'm kind of like, I want to learn how to do a back attack, and I'll try and figure it out myself, and I'll do what seems logical to me, and then I'll go check the cheat code
What would
guide.
Danaher say?
Yeah, 100%. You check your homework with Danaher, you know? And like that's like, so like, I think that one of the things that he professes that I think a lot of people don't take to the degree that I think they should is the problem solving element. Like you say about taking the post out and that's a sweep, like that gives your student like all the tools they need. Do you know what I mean? Now go out and figure it out, mate.
Yeah,
you know?
and again, it's all the words we use. You'll be the same as me, mate, because we've come through the same. We've got the same view of jiu-jitsu, even 100%. Though you're 95% no-gi and I'm 95% gi. I think because of our shared experiences and because we both believe in the same kind of philosophy around jiu-jitsu, we'll be saying the same things. I often say to my guys, which you'll have heard a million times, jiu-jitsu is just a series of problems.
Yeah.
You've got to figure out which one to fix in which order, and when you do that, it's simple.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
not a difficult
Absolutely,
thing to do
absolutely.
once you understand the process. So let's talk Scramble then.
Yeah.
We've got 20 minutes. So I want to, and the reason we wanted you on.
Can I finish on the system? I'm really
Go
sorry.
on, go for it.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm
go
sorry to cut you off. I'm really, I just like, I'm quite proud of it in a word.
Go on.
I was just going to say, like, for systems wise, I'll keep it super brief. Like, this is my, how do you get from white to black? Like this, do you know what I mean? Like, this is the way that I see it. So you've got, and I'm sorry for that, but like you've got technique, experience, strategy, and mindset. Okay, and each of these progresses in terms of terms. So you've got short-term technique, you learn your single leg X. Your single leg X looks the same as my single leg X. Your single leg X looks the same as my single leg X. Okay, or your Toreado pass looks the same as my Toreado pass. Now, if your technique looks the same as Mike's technique, what's the difference? You know what I mean? What is the difference?
Bodies, is it? Or is there no difference?
Well, if you Toreado pass Mike, does it work?
No.
If Mike Toreado passes you, does it work?
Yeah.
So what's the difference?
Experience.
Perfect,
Yeah.
right? So Mike's done it a lot more than you have. Now, I would say that that's like, so you've done 100 Toreado passes, Mike's done 10,000. Do you know what I mean? Yep. Okay, so the next level up from that is strategy. So let's say you try and Toreado pass Mike, it's not going to work. Now let's say that you're purple belt level and Mike's like T, I'm just going to Toreada pass you, mate. Would you stop it?
Yeah, I'd hope so.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So,
you better do it.
so once your experience levels match, so your technique match at the beginning, now your experience levels match. Okay, so what's the next level up? Now, like Mike's like not telling you that he's going to Toreada pass you, but he still will Toreada pass you. You're just purple belt. Mike's black. So what's the difference there?
His mentality, right?
Well, that's the next level up.
Tactics.
Tactics and strategy, right? So Mike is like fakes left, fakes right, pressures, disengages pressure, pulls your pants, makes you think about this, makes you think about that, boom, passes. Do you know what I mean? So like once your experience levels are, within the same bracket, then you're going to have success, okay? Or sorry, then you're going to be a bit more even.
Yeah.
So the next level up is your strategy. So how do you approach this, So I'm on somebody's back, I want to choke them. Okay, my strategy might be, I'm going to try and choke them. Oh, it didn't work, I'll try and trap an arm. Okay, cool, now it's 2v1, I can go for a choke. Okay, and then so let's say that you're now black belt, Mike's a black belt. Okay, you're rolling against each other. Have you seen Mike's strategies by this point?
Yeah.
Yeah, so is his strategy going to work?
No.
No. Okay, so this is where me and Fred are at. Okay, and this is where the next level up. So Fred and I'm not joking, Fred and I have had, because I keep count of the stats all the time, right? Fred and I have had 39 rounds in a row without a guard pass now. Right. 39 rounds. We've had, what does that work out? It's over 3 hours of jiu-jitsu, basically, without a guard pass. Can you imagine that? Do you know what I mean? And what's the difference?
For both sides?
Both sides, top or bottom, neither of us have scored. We scored some takedowns, Fred's choked me from the back, I've choked him from the back, Fred's Kimura'd me because he's got an amazing Kimura and all the rest of these sort of things, but no guard pass. And that's because we're at this level now where we've seen it all, ish. Do you know what I mean? Ish. Do you know what I mean? And our strategies, we figured each other out to a degree, and an improvement in our strategy is not going to beat the other person. My guard strategy is just as good as his passing strategy is just as good as my guard. So what's the next level up from that? Mentality, like you said, mindset. So if, let's say it's you v Mike now, and you are both black belt, you both train forever, equal age, size, all the rest of it. Okay, so if you're essentially fighting this clone of yourself in this way, right? How do you beat the clone of yourself if everything's equal?
Do something that I wasn't expecting.
That's not a bad shout. I like that. That's a cool answer. Okay, the thing that I think is the key here is let's say I'm going to roll with you right now. Have you trained today?
No.
No. Okay, so I roll with you now. Going to get the best version of yourself. Let's say you've just done a 2-hour marathon of just hard spars. I roll with you now. How's it going to be?
Fucked.
Yeah, different, right? So the mentality difference is I'm not even going to try and pass your guard. I'm just going to work you. I'm going to pressure you. I'm just going to approach this instead of trying to apply my strategies, technique, and experience. I'm going to approach this we've got a 5-minute round. I'm going to spend 4 minutes trying to drown you, and then I'm going to hope to have that last minute versus the undrowned Fred. The drowned Fred versus that. Now, it doesn't work like that because Fred's amazing, his cardio is great and all the rest. But the tired version of you is totally different to the mentally occupied version of you, which is totally different to the fresh version of you. So we get past this point where our single leg X's will look the same, right? You put me in single leg X, it's not going to look any different to the way that I did. After a certain period of time, our experience within the position matches up. After a certain period of time, I might fake you out and go for it, but you'll have seen it. And so eventually it's sort of got to become about how do you just approach the whole role. And that's where I think elite black belt comes. Do you know what I mean? So how do you get to that elite level is how do you approach it? And this is like the archetypes in boxing, the brawler, the technician, do you know what I mean? The distance fighter, the infighter, these sort of things. So can you then apply the correct mindset to approach to this sort of thing for the right time? You watch Gordon Ryan, does he ever look like he's making effort when he's rolling? No, he just looks chilled, even against Buchecha, which is mental because it's Buchecha. Do you know what I mean? You watch Roger Gracie versus Buchecha. Is he scrambling super hard? No, he's pretty clunky, really. Yeah. You know what I mean? But what's the difference between the two of them? Well, Roger Gracie's Roger Gracie. Do you know what I mean? He's got a different mentality to the game. I'm not saying that Buchecha wouldn't have that, but I'm saying on that day, Roger's mentality was better. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and also maybe even just it goes back to the experience thing. Roger's been around a lot longer. Everyone wanted to see that match, the second match. It was just experience. I think Buchecha made a mistake, you know what I mean? And Hodges took the back and it was over, right? Maybe all those 4 things, it's a great analogy, I love it. Maybe sometimes you take a step back to go forward as well, right?
Do you see Buchecha making mistakes?
I'd have to watch the match again. I'm pretty sure it's the one I'm thinking about.
Yeah, no, he
I
did
think
make a
made
mistake. He did. But do you, in general, see Buchecha making a mistake?
No, he's one of the best.
Did Hodger Gracie force the mistake, or was Hodger Gracie's mindset better in a way that his mind was stronger and therefore he didn't make the mistake? So, like, is that an experiential thing, or is that a mindset thing? Because I would argue that Buchecha is Buchecha. I've never seen Buchecha make many mistakes at all. Do you know what I mean? And like, this is the difference in my mind in like tennis between an unforced error and a forced error. And I would say that like Buchecha was forced into the error. Do you know what I mean? And is that Hodger Gracie's experience overwhelming him, or is it the moment overwhelming him, or is it the mindset overwhelming him? Because
we'll never know.
Well, yeah, it'd be really interesting to ask, I think.
I'm asking him.
I would. I'd love to see what he said. I really would. I'd just be like, what happened, dude? Do you know what I mean? I'm working with a guy called Mark Diakese at the moment, who's like the best athlete that I've probably ever come across. And he lost one of his fights to a guy called Dan Hooker, and he beat Dan Hooker, and Dan Hooker's currently at the top of the division. But he beat him for 2.5 rounds, beat the brakes off him for 2.5 rounds, changed levels, shot in and got guillotined. And I was like, did Dan Hooker beat you, or did you beat you? You know, because you won 2.5 rounds and then you made a macro transition that cost you the fight. So was that a technical mistake? Yes. But why did you do it? Oh, I wanted to show that I was a complete, well-rounded martial artist. It's a mindset error.
Yeah.
It's a mindset error.
Definitely.
So you can,
Sorry.
apart from, so which aspect, as a coach, how does it work in to teach each different level of that tree?
Absolutely, great question. So absolutely, this is the question, like such a good question. So like, let's say you're teaching a white belt, where do you start?
Technique.
Okay, so you need to get your reps out. Okay, now what does getting your reps out constitute? Gaining experience, right? So you teach your white belt single leg X, and then can the single leg X work on you? No, it doesn't have enough experience. So you get the white belt to do 100 reps like you do in class. Absolutely. And then you guys have your like next level up program, do you know what I mean? Where you've got to that point where you've developed a lot of technique. And now it's time to build that experience. And that experience then will come against levels of resistance. Now, if you've got 100 reps of single leg X and Mike wants to smash you, are you going to build any experience? Not really, you don't get any reps. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But you've talked to me beforehand about how generous you are in terms of the way you roll with your students.
Yes,
and
we are, aren't we? We have to be.
Absolutely. And if you could take that time to try and smash them and feel good about yourself, or you could take that time to roll to help them improve. And like you talked about, you roll to help them improve, because like a meaningful rep is meaningful, you know, and like a build up of meaningful reps then comes against higher level resistance. And that's where I'd say you're like your blues or your purples. And the blues or your purples like have built that level of experience. They've started to see stuff a little bit more, but it's not working on each other anymore. So now it's kind of like your feints, your strategy, your chains of attacks. So it's no longer just single leg X. It would be single leg X to X guard to back to single leg X to off balancing and blah, 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 you know? Right. And then as you get further down that chain, and the thing about this is, can you develop experience without technique?
No.
Can you develop strategy without experience?
No.
Can you develop a good mindset without any of the others? And that's the question. Because like I would argue you can develop this mindset, and this mindset's like a positive feedback loop. Do you know what I mean? And that's the one that sort of is the long term that works all the way through. So you talked about the concept of the post and all the rest of it. Like you're imbuing them with this mindset of problem solving. Yep. Now, obviously that's going to be different for a white belt than it will for a black belt, but the black belt's still just trying to problem solve more problems. Yeah. Right. So that's how I think.
It's very, very interesting, mate. I'm glad you've shared it. So we talk again, or I talk again about, someone asked me like, you know, should I be coming to live training classes, or should I be coming to GB1 classes? Or
yeah.
And my response, not knowing what you were going to say, is the same insofar as I say, well, you've got to come to GB1 because that's the knowledge, that's the technique,
100%,
right?
100%.
You've got to go to live training because that's the experience. And I call it skill acquisition. Right?
Yeah, so absolutely. Same thing. Yeah,
same
absolutely.
thing.
Yeah.
And then it kind of moved back around in the cycle, and then you could create a strategy when you know a bit more. So
yeah,
we've got to talk about
let's do that. I'm sorry for
no, it's good.
Tangent.
And the reason is, you know, as we spoke off air, like it's very important to us when we're doing this podcast and we're sharing jiu-jitsu. And we've had Robert Drysdale, Kurt Osianta, Mauricio Gomez, Victor Estima, like the who's who on this podcast is brilliant.
Yeah, and now me. So
And now you, because we want to celebrate jiu-jitsu within
100%. Yeah, and
we
you're
don't
very gracious
see
in that
we
as
don't
well.
see other academies as competition. We see it as jiu-jitsu. But Scramble is different because
You see us as competition.
definitely not. I see, well, not competition. I see you as, personally, as somewhere I could go and learn, because you are 99% no gi.
Yeah, I mean, I'm maybe 95. But
95.
Yeah.
So
I mean, because we also do MMA and wrestling and Muay Thai as well. So we've got a little bit of, but yeah, I mean, like,
You specialise
people would know
in
us as a grappling academy, for no-gi grappling primarily. But I mean, Fred won the Euros in gi. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Tell us about Scramble Academy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And just as well, like, I don't know many other places who, you know, how far away are we from one another? About 25 minutes, something like that. We're opposite side of Leeds. But again, like that shows your quality, that you're happy to have, you know, another coach that's in the same space. So I really appreciate that. Scramble, this is why I said it's quite romantic, really, because Scramble is Fred, myself, and Mike.
You come back together, man.
Yeah, so we all went off to different
I never
parts.
knew that
and
you
then,
met before. I never knew that.
yeah, so it really, like, Fred and I talked. So when I talked to Tom about the potential of GB Leeds, I wanted to bring in Fred because, you know, I admire the guy a lot. He's been a mentor to me. He's very, very good, you know, and all the rest. And so Fred and I had started to talk about, you know, what would that look like? What would we do different? And, you know, how could we upgrade the facilities? And at the time, my thought process had never been about actually coaching, because I didn't see myself at that level. You know what I mean? I thought of myself more as a manager. But when it came to the point of like, well, what are we going to do? Sorry, hang on. Smart busting my nose. What are we going to do? We thought, okay, well, we'll go and do something. We'll have a go at this, you know. And you know, it was a big risk considering Fred wanted to start a family and he had a certain amount of savings up from China. And, you know, he took a punt on our idea. Do you know what I mean? His idea, my idea, and combined it together. And then we spoke to Mike, and Mike runs Kaizen in Lancaster. And Kaizen is a phenomenal facility. Like, it was the first academy in the UK that looks like AOJ, that ripped that concept a little bit. Do you know what I mean? And we I wouldn't say we copied them, we definitely didn't, but we took the positives from their business model 100%.
Beautiful academy.
It's amazing. Yeah.
So if you haven't seen Scramble, it's the white mats, it's the very clean lines, very cool.
Absolutely. And so we built that out, and then it was very much like a build it and they all come, and that's where the no-gi squad came from. And, you know, Louis Blair, first member, and we had a bunch of guys come through the door, and then it was just a case of getting on with it, you know. So we built it in an office block to start off with, and we tried to do something a little bit different. We kind of be a little bit like kind of how you guys are, like the anti-jiu-jitsu gym, where it's not spit sawdust, it's like beautifully clean. It's like, it's, you know, like it's a pleasure to be in the space and not just do some jiu-jitsu and go home.
100%.
You know, and so we tried to emulate that concept, and we built the place, and it started to, you know, it went really, really well. And then the pandemic hit about 3 years in. I mean, during that 3 years, we had the good fortune of getting onto Polaris and things like this, and getting a chance to test our jiu-jitsu a little bit. And then we built this new place over the pandemic, which in hindsight was also a massive risk, because we sunk an enormous amount of our own personal net worths into something that, you know, we didn't even know if we'd be able to do. You look at the Spanish flu, like 6 years, and then it became endemic. Do you know what I mean? So it was like, you know,
I was in the same place, man.
100%,
in lockdown,
100%.
building a contact sport business. Like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, like, it really occurred to me when the pandemic hit just how useless I am for society, you know. In that moment, I was like, oh, wow, right, okay, I'm like the first thing that is going to be like axed. And we actually closed the doors 2 weeks before it was government mandated, because it was led by myself actually, but I sat down with Fred and Mike, and I was like, I don't know what this is. I don't know how bad it's going to be, but I do not want to be responsible for anything unfortunate happening. We're closing now. Right. And they were like, well, we've not been mandated yet. And I was like, well, what do you think? And it's like, okay, Fred's an ethical person, Mike's an ethical person. We just close the doors, you know, no idea what was going to come. And, you know, ultimately, I don't think it's quite as I don't think the sort of the jiu-jitsu community tends to sort of skew its ages downwards, if you know what I mean. So, but I think it was the right decision at the time.
And you guys are based over in Army now, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And where do people get to find you guys? Where can they head? You got a website and stuff like that?
Yeah, so scrambleacademyleeds.com. And again, like I think of like the jiu-jitsu that I teach. Like I was always the MMA guy, so I was always thinking, how do you win a fight? Like how do you win a fight? Like what's useful? And I really since then I've got like two hats. I've got like my MMA coach hat. I've got my jiu-jitsu hat. And sport jiu-jitsu is very different from self-defense, and MMA is very different from self-defense. But initially it was, how did I had a couple of amateur MMA fights to test it, and I was really thinking like, how do I take this martial art and apply it in a way where I can take the least amount of damage, but also cause the least amount of damage to incapacitate someone. And ultimately that's where our jiu-jitsu is now led to, or my jiu-jitsu is led to anyway. But so we do mixed martial arts. We do Muay Thai with Marco. Marco's a 10-year veteran.
Yeah.
Built like a house.
I used to train with Marco back at when he was in uni.
Yeah. Nice guy.
Yeah.
And then that's that. So it's all come together quite nicely.
And you guys do, what I love about what you guys, so I mean, you put it out there, no politics, and I think we believe that. Slightly more challenging for us as Gracie Barra because we are bound by, I suppose, the organisation as well, and some of the rules there. But for people who don't know, who are new to Jiu-Jitsu, Scramble's a clothing brand, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you describe it as that?
Yeah. So we have no legal ties, but we are affiliated and we are sponsored by those guys. Matt Benyon and Ben Tong, who run that brand, have always been amazing with us.
Cool shit as well.
Very cool. Like the only place that I've found that do rainbow spats, and that's like my I'm going to try and get a collab sorted with them at some point, so Matt, sort me out. It's really cool, like a little bit counterculture, which is what we tried to be a little bit to start off with, so it fit really nicely. And then it also sort of gave us a little bit of a brand association. And Matt and Ben didn't have to do that. Do you know what I mean? Like the only thing they were really getting out of us is referrals for clothing.
Right.
So bless those guys, international clothing brand running Polaris and all the rest of it. And really through Fred's contacts, they decided to take a bit of a risk with us. And that's the first Scramble Academy Leeds.
Well, then you guys recently we put it up on our Instagram, I think, to advertise it, right? Like
open mat.
Open mat.
Yeah.
So tell us about that. What's that all about?
So there's a coach, judo god called Owen Livesey, I think Livesey. Yeah. So he messaged me basically saying, fancy some rounds. And I thought, well, why not?
I think, does Tom Indergaard look after Owen? From a physio perspective, I think he does.
Yeah. And Owen's obviously, so Owen's 85 kilos of pure man beef, do you know what I mean? So I'm quite looking forward to seeing how my guard deals with that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Lord knows I'm not going to stand up with him.
Experience, strategy.
So he'd message, and I'm a big admirer of like somebody like that who's like, he's youthful, he's competitive, and he like what he wants is good competition. Do you know what I mean? So, so I figured, why not make sure that there's a bunch of rest rounds for me as well? But just kidding. I just thought, why not invite everybody? Do you know what I mean? Like if we're gonna be training, why not? And it's an open invite, as pretty much everything is. And really, I want to kind of see how this one goes down, because Sunday is a day that most people devote to their family or to their, to their own time. So if people are willing to take the time out of their Sunday to come and have a little bit of a roll around, that'd be fantastic. And then if that goes super well, then I'd quite like to make it a once a month, once every 2 months, with the idea of it being a pay what you feel. And then that will all go to charity, every penny. So this first one is just a tester. I don't want people to feel like they're going to turn up and then I'm going to be like, psych, do you know what I mean? But I want people to sort of see what that is about, what atmosphere. I've got an 80s playlist filled with bangers.
Nice.
You know what I mean? That's going to be amazing. The bangers playlist, and we're all going to have a good time. And then as the future moves on, I hope that I can develop it into productive relationships, but also productive charity work.
Yeah, great. That's awesome, man. So anyone listening from our community who, because we don't do a lot of no-gis, just a little bit, and some of our competitors do compete in no-gi, that is the best place to go. If you want to train with the best no-gi players in the region, you've got to go to Scramble. Like for legit, I would never, and I have. You've referred people to us, which I'm insanely grateful for. I want to do submission grappling. I'm like, we're in the wrong place, man. You need to go over to Army. Like, we regularly do that. And because it's the right thing to do.
We do. We have a lot of coaches that come to us to develop, the leg locks specifically. These. So I've been working with a lot of the local coaches for that. And that's fantastic as well, because you know yourself. There's not always a lot of time when you're running a business like this. It really isn't. So for people to take the time out and come to us, it makes me feel a little bit bad because I don't have as much time to go and train in other places as much as I'd like. So.
But you have carved out a niche, I think, and
of course,
and like I said, if you want to get the best, you've got to go to the best. And I think round here, in my opinion, you're the best for no gi in your academy, and submission grappling. So that'd be my message to any of our students, and we talk about it in the academy anyway, don't we?
For sure, absolutely.
Go to Scramble and develop that.
And
I'm going to be going down. So
I hope to build a close relationship with you guys and come down as well. I'm happy to pop a gi on and get my ass whooped. Do you know what I mean? I really am.
Yeah, and just from me on like the business side of things, it's really nice to see another martial arts academy take it so seriously. Like the
it's our full-time job,
and everything around.
It's
media,
quite hard to support 3 coaches as well. So it's one of those that definitely, as I said, if you're going to make your millions, it's not necessarily the best for 3 guys doing it all at once. Do you know what I mean? So, it's really a testament to the character of Fred and Mike as well. Because, Fred, 2 kids, 37, he's got a life, you know what I mean? And yet he can devote his time to these sort of things. And for myself, I can see as time goes on and on, there's more and more responsibility. And that's something that I definitely don't want to shirk.
For sure. Speaking of running out of time for things, we're all fresh out of time. I think you've got something on. You go.
Yeah.
But before that, how can people find out about your upcoming competition? Find out more about you and all that kind of thing.
I try and give you a good flavour of my character and my thought process on Instagram. I'm not enormously prolific on social media, but I think that's a good idea of seeing how I think and what we do. And there's obviously the Instagram for the Academy, there's Facebook, there's my Instagram, and then there's the website. But in general, just like you would with here, turn up, have a go.
Awesome. We'll tag all those things.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
Really, thanks for being here, man. Really nice to meet you.
Mike, thank you.
Cheers, bro.
Cheers. See you guys.
Peace.